back in 2018, the ectopic pregnancy, I drove myself to the hospital. Knowing my own body, I knew something was wrong. And with that situation, I felt like I was miscarrying because I just was bleeding uncontrollably, and it was filling up more than like 2 overnight pads. I called my mother, and my mother was like, I think you should go to the hospital. I ended up driving myself to the hospital. I went to Yale first on York Street, and I waited in the waiting area. They had me waiting in it, and I was in such excruciating pain to the point where I felt like I was about to pass out. And I said, you know what? I'm leaving here. I ended up going to the St. Raphael's campus. They ended up doing an ultrasound, and when they did the ultrasound, the lady, she left the room, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, why did she leave me here? She came back. She was like, I gotta talk to I gotta call the doctor. First they say you gotta call your emergency contact. So me being there by myself, I called my mother, and she ended up showing up literally as they was wheeling me in for surgery. I ended up losing one of my fallopian tubes, of course the baby. The next morning, my sister came to the hospital to see me because you know, they was ready to discharge me after that. My sister came to see me, and I lied to the people, and I told her my sister was picking me up, and I drove myself home. That was probably one of the dangerous things I could have done, but me being the person that I am, I just be feeling like I don't be having the support, like when I be going through stuff. So I ended up driving myself home. Now, after, you know, the pregnancy, my body still was experiencing hormones to where my body thought that I still was pregnant. I was going to New Haven Planned Parenthood, and I, you know, let them know I went for my regular checkup, and I let them know, I was like, I'm still leaking breast milk. Now, mind you, this is probably 6 months after I've had the surgery, everything. The lady kept saying, well, your body has to regulate, you know, you just give it some time. And I was having like long periods where it was at one point I was having a period for like a month, and I had I think it's Nesplanon. I had the thing in my arm, and I was like, I gotta get this removed because I don't know if the medicine done wore off, and because I didn't even know how I got pregnant because I was on birth control. I ended up getting that removed. Her, you know, check my hormones and stuff like that. She was like, so your prolactin levels are a little high. She was like, we're gonna test them in a few months and we'll see. And I was like, okay. A few months passed by, maybe another 6 months. They ended up retesting them, and they were higher. Like, I thought you said the levels were supposed to go down. She was like, you know, they are, but if anything, you know, we could give you some medication to regulate that. And I'm like, I don't want no medication. My body should not be saying that I'm pregnant. After another 6 months, 3 months, maybe within that time, I had them check it again. But this time I went to another Planned Parenthood location because I'm like, I don't believe what this lady is saying is what it is. So now I need to go somewhere else. They were like that the levels went down a little bit. So I was like, okay, well, it's starting to go down. So maybe everything is going back to normal. Yeah, psych your brain. Because then I had my primary care doctor check the levels. Primary care doctor, he was a new doctor. And I also had got all new doctors. Like I had got an ENT doctor. I had got a new primary care doctor, new dentist. Like I had just got all new, everybody new. Cause I just something just was telling me, get a new team of people. So that's what I did. I did that, and the doctor said, your prolactin levels is a lot higher than from what Planned Parenthood was, you know, they sent over the records, and the numbers was going up and down, going up and down. So that's when he referred me to another doctor. He was like, I'm gonna refer you to a specialist. Once I went to the specialist, that's when the specialist was like, okay, your levels are high, and regulate your prolactin levels with medication if needed. We're also gonna do an MRI, because it was to the point where I was still producing milk. I should not be producing no breast milk, and there is no baby. My boobs will hurt, like, to the point where I would have to give them some type of sensation in order for the pain not to actually be there. And that's not normal, because they don't want you to stimulate your breasts because they don't want you to produce the milk. But me, that was the only thing that I could do, because if I didn't, I was be in so much pain. Here we are at the new doctor, getting blood work and also an MRI. Now, when they do the MRI, you're just checking my pituitary gland, which is in the back of my brain. When I went to this doctor, I also was confused, because I'm like, why am I going to a neurologist? Why am I like, it was very scary for me, because I didn't quite understand why I was going to certain doctors or what was going on. And I was going to these appointments by myself. I should have had a support system or somebody to go with me. Like, I'm pretty sure my grandmother would have went with me, but my grandmother isn't very medical savvy neither. So it wasn't a situation where I thought like my grandmother would have been able to go with me and understand what these people were saying, because I'm her caretaker. I'm the one that looks into the medical things and her medical needs and make sure she good. So it was very confusing to me, because I did not understand why I was going to this doctor, what I was going there for. They told me that yes, my prolactin levels are high, but in order to regulate my prolactin level, I had to be on birth control. Now, I'm like, okay, well, why do I need to be on birth control? And they're like, that's what's going to regulate the hormones. So since I found out all of this, now I've been on birth control straight through so that I don't get a period. They also told me if I wanted to tie my tubes, that if I was to tie my tubes, that I still would have to be on birth control. So I was like, I don't want to go through that procedure, because I'm still going to need to be on birth control. So I felt like that was God telling me, don't go get your tubes tied, girl. You're going to be wasting your time and something else could go wrong, and just don't do it. So I came to the conclusion that that was not an option for me. But then with them doing the MRI, that's where they found a tumor. So if I wasn't persistent, if I didn't keep up with being on top of these people, I would not have found my tumor. And it all started from a miscarriage. It all started from a miscarriage. And not only that, I was bleeding internally. And if I didn't listen to my body and go to the emergency room and leave Yale emergency waiting room, because I was sitting in there for hours, sitting there about to pass out. If I did not leave there and go to the other campus, I don't know if I would be able to be here today to actually talk about my story, because they were not listening to me. The waiting room wasn't even packed, but these people just assumed because I was just saying I was in pain that they wasn't taking it serious. I actually was in pain. I was bleeding internally, and the tube had ruptured. So not only did I lose my baby, but I lost one of my fallopian tubes. And then I ended up finding out I had a brain tumor from that situation. Not necessarily that situation, but I found out that I had the tumor because I was having this milk produced and couldn't understand why I'm producing milk with no child. So not only was I mentally going through it, medically I was going through it, because not only am I going through postpartum and dealing with this stuff by myself, Now I got to start a whole new journey. And I don't quite understand this whole process.